Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Belcher along with you on your Thursday, reacting to everything that happened in the Citrus Bowl on Tuesday. Reminder, tonight, quickly, Carolina calls Coach Paris and Derek Scott, 6 o'clock right here in the game, getting you set for men's basketball conference play as they take on Mississippi State coming up this weekend. But it is time for our Laying the Woods segment brought to you by our friends over at Georgia Pacific. And Jack, needless to say, Coach Beamer seemed to be ready to lay the wood to Brett Bielema in the late third quarter of this game as things got a little bit heated between the two towards the end of this one.
Yeah, it was it was interesting to say the least. So, like in case you missed it, Brett Bielema is walking over towards the South Carolina sideline to check on an injured player, and then he does the what do they call it? He
called it the T-bar. He puts his arms straight out.
Yeah, so he did that, and Beamer took exception to it, and he had to be held back. Man, I'm like watching from the press box, and he's like being held back by like 3 different guys. I'm like, what the heck just happened? And then you see what happened in the replay and stuff. And it's like, oh, okay. But yeah, it got heated, and they kind of I think you felt a little chippy the rest of the game, honestly.
Sure.
And then they have their post-game handshake and things are fine. And then, you hear Beamer basically taking shots at Bielema in post-game and vice versa. And you get a little bit more explanation on what happened. But, yeah, and Bielema's thing is that he made the gesture at, quote, the whole damn sideline.
Right.
And when people, clearly thought it was directly at Beamer, which I can understand because, Beamer was pissed the whole game about the late substitutions and stuff. And Bielema obviously seemingly took exception to the whole kickoff thing where Juju McDowell did the hand motion and, to signal basically for a touchback. And then he didn't. And South Carolina returned it for 25 yards. So, look, a lot to break down from it, but yeah, it was definitely an interesting situation for sure.
Let's get both sides of the story here. Start off with Coach Beamer giving his side on the situation that happened third quarter. Cut number 14 here, Dave.
It's heated and competitive out there, David, but in all my years of being around football, I've never seen an opposing head coach come over to the opposing team's sideline and basically make a gesture towards the opposing head coach. And I think he was upset about something that we did on the kickoff return in regards to Juju on the throwback to Nick Harbor. But I would say he needs to check the rule book because that's something that we cleared with the officials before the game. So disappointing. He got a lot of respect for him. He's obviously done this for a long time, but in all my years of coaching, I've never seen that happen, David. An opposed coach come over while his player's hurt and basically have something to say to the opposing head coach. But I got my own team to worry about. We weren't good enough today.
So that's Beamer's side of the story. Cut number 27, Dave. This is Brett Bielema explaining his side of the exchange.
The only thing that I did was there's a unwritten philosophy in coaching that when you do this as a college kickoff return guy, what you're doing is you're telling everybody else that it's going to be a fair catch and it's going to be dead in the end zone when the ball lands. The reason we do that, and I first got aware of it was in the NFL, was kickoff and kickoff return is the highest percentage of injury in the sport. So one of the things that coaches began to do was everybody out of respect started T-barring. I think these guys would tell you everybody does that. I've never seen it any other way. It's not an official. There's nothing illegal. They didn't do anything illegal. But it put us, I think, in a position that we now, the ethic of what that is, got evaporated there, though, because our kids stop. So when you're a kickoff return unit, right, if I'm running at you and the kickoff return is back there, the guy blocking me, he doesn't know what's going on, so he's going to begin to engage you. And when you see somebody do that before the whistles are blown, you can stop, decelerate, and you don't have these massive collisions. Listen, I love Shane. He's a good person. I know somebody said that he thought I did it to him. I did it their whole damn sideline. I wasn't going personally at him. I did it their whole sideline. I just wanted them to understand that I know what just happened. There's nothing illegal. There's nothing wrong. I just have never seen it done in any level of football, college or pro. That's it.
So there's 2 segments to this. What caused this to happen and the reaction to it. So let's start off with what caused this to happen, as you heard Beamer allude to and Brett Bielema give more detail on. The kickoff where Juju McDowell did the T-bar, sticks his arms straight out, fields the kick. Now, that is not waving off as a fair catch. You can do that, and that does not change the play at all. Then immediately throwing it across to Nick Harbor, who skirted up the sidelines on the kickoff return. There is no rule against that. Brett Bielema described it as an unwritten rule. I hate unwritten rules in sports because guess what? They're not written. There is nothing that prevents you from doing those things. And if you are a head coach, if you see a gray area you can exploit, you are not doing your team a service if you are not trying to push the limits of those things. So what Coach Beamer did, perfectly legal, as he said, he talked to the officials before the game about it, saying, hey, here's something that we are planning on doing. Is that okay? And they had no problem with it. No flag was called or anything like that. So no rule was broken here. That is something that is really important to note. Coach Beamer did nothing wrong by the letter of the law in college football.
Yeah, you're totally right on that. Like, again, I am not a fan of unwritten rules either. It's like they're not written for a reason, right? And I understand his standpoint from, like, I don't agree with the whole how he went about it afterwards and stuff, like the whole going over the sideline and doing that. When you have an injured player over there, like, what are we doing here, man? But I understand the standpoint of, yeah, you don't want you don't want, guys to get hurt and stuff. Because, look, he's right. They were slowing down. It kind of reminds me a little bit of, and I'm not trying to make it seem like it's the same situation, but like when Kenny Pickett a few years ago in the ACC championship game doesn't slide and he does the fake slide and then, players stop and stuff. It's kind of like that in a way to some extent. And, look, the last thing you want is anyone to get hurt. But, like, it's not illegal. South Carolina didn't do anything wrong on it. And Beamer got it cleared with the officials before the game. So, look, it is what it is. And, just a lot of drama, and let's just hope these two coaches don't see each other again anytime soon.
Quick story time here, because I'm a firm believer that if you live in a glass house, you shouldn't throw stones because, again, they're going to get thrown back at you, and that's going to end up breaking your house. Moral of the story there. Do you remember the 2006 college football season at all? I know you're a little bit younger than me, but do you have any memories of that?
I was 6 years old, man.
Okay. Well, there was a one-year rule in place in college football that year where the clock started on kickoffs when toe met leather. It was not when the returner fielded, and the clock would continue to run after the kick was fielded. So at the opening kickoff, the offense wouldn't take a snap until, 25 or 30 seconds into the game. Again, one-year rule was very weird, very quirky. Well, Coach Bielema was at Wisconsin at the time. They were playing Penn State. At the end of the first half of that game, they were leading 10-3, had scored a touchdown, had scored with about 23 seconds left. 23 seconds, a lot of time for Penn State to potentially do something before the half. Coach Bielema intentionally went offsides on 2 separate kickoffs to basically drain the clock because the clock didn't reset when those kind of things happened, and essentially forced Penn State to return 3 kickoffs before halftime. Again, dangerous play. We've known the injury level of this for a very long time. Nothing new here. He exploited a rule at that point in time to give an advantage to his team, which ended up working. They ended up winning that game 13-3. After the game, he said, I didn't necessarily agree with the rule, the way that it's written, but I knew the rule and I wanted to maximize it. I have to put my team in a position to have success. After the game, Rod Gilmore of ESPN wrote, maybe so, but his tactics were unsportsmanlike and totally indifferent to unnecessarily exposing Wisconsin and Penn State players to additional harm. Everyone knows the special teams plays are the most dangerous plays in a game because of clipping, chop blocks, blindside hits, and vulnerable kick return men. So, again, your philosophy on this and mindset can change. I know he said he had extra insight when he was in the NFL a couple years ago with the New England Patriots, but the crux of the matter is you did the exact same thing in your own coaching career 18 years ago. What Coach Beamer here did any different at the end of the day?
Exactly, right? Like, again, it literally is no different, and he kind of sounds like a hypocrite at that point. But, look, I get it. Heat of the moment, things happen, and you're going to be pissed when something doesn't go your way or this team does that. Okay, cool. But, when you have stuff like that from the past, when you literally basically did the same exact thing to some extent on special teams, it's like, can you really be saying that? But I get in the heat of the moment, he's probably not even going to remember that.
And like you said, the optics of doing this while your players hurt, which there was a lot of fake injuries in this game. Let's go ahead and address that.
Gosh, man, that was so ridiculous.
The injury that occurred when this went down was very legitimate. The defensive back essentially took Sellers' knee to the head, and when he got up and was walking off the field, he didn't look like he knew what year it was, let alone what kind of game he was playing in. So that injury was legitimate. So while you're trying to check on the welfare of your player, to then taunt the opposing sideline, opposing coach, whatever the actual situation was here, just looks low. You know what I mean? Like, and again, very legitimate injury happening. Address your player. Make sure he's good, because, again, dude seemed like he was seeing starts at that point in time. If you want to have a conversation, and I went back and looked yesterday watching the game back, because the Sugar Bowl didn't end up happening, so I was watching the game back last night. I wanted to see if there was any interaction between Bielema and the officials after that kickoff happened, which they didn't show on TV. Maybe you saw it in the stadium different, but we didn't see what happened, because that's something you need to address in the moment, right? So, and again, there's not any opportunity for the coaches to convene with each other until after the game, but that's something that you talk about with the coach face to face, right? Doing this taunting motion, which he probably should have been flagged for being honest, and there's a lot of officiating gaps in this game, that being one of them. It's just a bad optic and bad look all around it. Coach Beamer was rightfully upset and fired up about it, because why are you coming over here all the way on the other side of the field trying to taunt my team when you should be, adhering to your player that's injured?
Exactly. It's such a bad look, honestly, in my opinion. Like, I don't know. It caused a whole thing, and then you see, I don't know if they showed it on the broadcast, but you could see it on the field. It's like the two, like after Shane gets all fired up and stuff, you have the two teams kind of not going at each other, but like, a bunch of rah-rah and stuff, and South Carolina's yelling at Illinois and vice versa. It's just, it was a whole mess, man. And like, again, it could have easily been prevented. Like, you go over to check on an injured player, you check on the injured player and leave it at that. You're not going over there to cause drama and stir up anything. And God forbid there was a fight or anything. Like, that would have just been 10 times worse. So this game was chaotic, to say the least.
And again, if you had a problem with what happened in the kickoff, I'm assuming he probably said something to the officials about it, to where they're probably going to tell him, hey, there's nothing illegal about it. If you want to take it up with Coach Beamer, you have a handshake after the game. You have an opportunity to talk to them and say, hey, I didn't appreciate what you did. Even though it's not illegal, talk about it then. But creating this whole situation at the end of the third quarter, which, again, the game just kind of got out of control from there, it seemed like, and it again overshadowed everything that happened up to that point, everything that happened afterwards. It's just a bad look all around.
Totally. This game was just, quite frankly, it was literally just drunk. This game was just different, and again, we're going to remember it for stuff like this, not necessarily what happened on the field.
Well, that's probably going to be the thing that most people remember this game for, but a lot of people locally are also going to remember it for somebody that didn't play in the second half, that being Nick Emmanwory. We'll have into that situation coming up next. To wrap up hour number one, it is Reaction Thursday. Let us know your thoughts, 803-404-6100 as well. He's Jack Belcher. I'm Tyler Head. It's the Extra Point here on the game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Belcher along with you on your Thursday. Reacting to everything that happened in the Citrus Bowl on Tuesday. South Carolina coming up short to Illinois fighting Illini 21-17. Reminder tonight, women's basketball taking on Missouri starting conference play, 6:30 pregame on our sister station 98.5 WOMG. I mentioned at the beginning of the show, most of what is going to be remembered from this game is nothing that happened on the field, but the things that happened either during timeouts or on the sideline. And one of the biggest ones that I've seen a lot of people reacting to all morning with Bill and Preston is the Nicky Emmanwory situation. Coach Beamer, very briefly in the pregame, cut number 15 here, Dave, was asked about the Nicky Emmanwory situation, and here's what he said.
Internal team matter. Not going to discuss it.
Left it at that. So for Terry and I were watching this game at Jay's Corner, had our watch party, which, by the way, shout out to everyone over there. Great atmosphere, great crowd. Really enjoyed being out there, gave some tickets away and all that kind of stuff. Great time. About the middle of the third quarter, maybe early fourth quarter, I said, Terry, Peyton Williams has been out there for a really long time. Who's missing? It wasn't until then that it occurred to me that Nicky Emmanwory had not played a single snap of the second half of this game. They weren't really talking about it on TV or anything like that. You were in the stadium and probably got a better perspective on this than anybody else. How did this go down from your vantage point?
All right, let's run this real quick. So, third quarter, first drive, I notice Nick on the sideline, and he's just hanging out on the sideline. No helmet on, no helmet in sight, actually. Like, normally some guys on the sideline that are not in would just have their helmet in hand and stuff. We've seen that before. No helmet in hand, a football in hand, just sitting there or standing there, smiling on the sideline, whatever. And I'm like, okay, one drive, maybe it's weird that he's not in to start the second half, but all right, whatever. And then, he's still out there on the sideline as South Carolina's playing. I'm like, all right, this can't be the Cam Ward situation, can it?
Right.
And then he disappears for a while, and I thought I was like missing him on the sideline. I'm like looking through the binoculars. I'm like, third, fourth quarter, he's not out there. And then turns out he wasn't out there for the back end of the second half. I think he got sent back to the locker room is basically how it went. And and then after the game, he's walking out, hood on, everything, and Dave Cloninger from Post and Courier goes up to him and just asks him point blank, like, I don't know what his question was, but the response was, yeah, that was my last game in South Carolina, basically, and that was it. And that he basically chose to sit out the second half. So I have a lot of thoughts on it. I have an issue with it. I just think you either play in the entire game or you don't. I think this is very much like a Cam Ward situation, which coincidentally just happened like 3 days earlier out in Orlando. It's not a good look, and it leaves a stain on the end of his career at South Carolina, because it was a great career, and he'll still be remembered for all the good stuff he did. But the diehards here, the people that really care about Carolina football, I can probably assure would remember him for what happened at the end. And you can't blame them, because it's like that's the last memory you have of him in a Gamecock uniform.
Obviously, Beamer didn't go into details about it. I know Mike Youve on Gamecock Central said that Emmanwory eventually wants to clear the air, but we don't have all the details. But all indications seem to point to the fact that the coaches did not know this was going to happen. Emmanwory played in the first half, and at some point in the locker room or as the second half started, told his coaches he was not going to go out there, and again was eventually sent back to the locker room. I'll go back to what I said about Cam Ward the other day. I don't have a problem with opting out. If you feel like it's best for your career to not play in a bowl game, that's fine. Make the decision beforehand. Now, Cam Ward's situation was apparently a little different because the game plan with Mario Cristobal and the entire team was he's only going to play the first half so he could get the Division I touchdown record. So they kind of knew what was happening going in. Emmanwory seems to be different, where the plan was he's going to play the entire game, but he makes the decision seemingly himself. And again, we don't know the whole story yet, but that seems to be what happened here, where he said, I'm not going to play in the second half, which alters the game plan. I don't know if that makes a difference if South Carolina wins this game, if he's out there in the second half or not. But again, in my opinion, I don't like how he went about this, if that is indeed what happened.
And literally, man, like just a week or two earlier, we hear him talking about how he was going to play in this game and, how much getting the 10th win would mean to this team. And then you go out there and do that. And it's just like, why would you do, like, it's just stupid, to be honest. It's like, if you're worried about getting hurt, don't play in the game. It's plain and simple. Don't play in the game. You're taking yourself out of what at the time was a 4-point game going into halftime. Like I don't know. It's a really bad look for him, and it's a shame because he's a great football player, and I'm sure he'll be fine on NFL draft boards and stuff. But it's like it's a quitter's mentality, in my opinion. That's just plain and simple.
Again, it seems like Emmanwory wants to give some more details on this. When that comes out, we don't exactly know. We can dive into this a little bit more coming up tomorrow, but definitely something that people are rightfully so heated about today with the reactions. So, Jack, we'll dive back into this tomorrow. Be safe getting back from Orlando, and man, what an interesting end to the season, nonetheless.
Yeah, man, I'll see you back in studio tomorrow. I'm ready to talk about all this game and stuff.
We'll continue to react to what happened on Tuesday in the Citrus Bowl. Westminster going to jump here with me next with a Gamecock Club Hour presented by Crant Schooling and Heating on your Thursday here on The Game. 10 o'clock on your Thursday morning. Welcome in. It is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. It's all right in West Mitchell today. Chris taking a few days off to start the new year. We'll get him back in here in a couple days, and we'll have to get all of his thoughts on the Citrus Bowl sometime next week because as we've been unpacking in the last hour with myself and Jack Beltry, a lot occurred on Tuesday afternoon/evening, to say the least. A lot of things on the field, a lot of things off the field, and at the end of the day, unfortunately, Wes, you don't get that coveted 10th win that we know Carolina really wanted, and something that would have been, only the 5th time in school history is you fall to Illinois 21-17 in the Citrus Bowl.
Yeah, I hope everybody had a happy new year. Hope everybody had a good Christmas, all that stuff. Man, yeah, it was I think if you're a Carolina fan, you've got mixed feelings. You've got the short term of, this was a disappointing way to end the year. And you kind of could see 10 wins right there for the taking. You knew this was a winnable game for you. However, I do think that was a pretty good Illinois team. Like I'm a little bit surprised that the line is what it was, and it proved to be pretty evenly matched teams. I thought, both sides made some plays, but both sides made their share mistakes. For the most part, it was a fairly evenly matched game, and you just didn't quite make enough plays, and we'll get into the why and the how and all that to go out a winner in this one. So you have those feelings of disappointment, which I think are very understandable from the fan base, and then that's sort of, I guess, juxtaposed with the
there's your SAT word of the day
for the year, with the 9 wins in a year when people were wondering if you could get bowl eligible.
Sure.
When it started. So I think short term, you understand the frustration, disappointment, all that, and there will always be a sense when I think people look back on this season, there will be a sense of what if. There was already that sense because of, the LSU game, the Alabama game, college football playoff, all those things. But then you add this game in there as well, which this game, I don't know, for y'all who went, maybe it was the same on TV. If you went to it, it felt like you were like having a fever dream or something. It was just arguments on the field, the Emmanwory situation, the mascots getting kicked through the uprights. There was a random Florida rain shower right before the game, and then it was the most beautiful day you've ever seen for the rest of it. It was just it was very disjointed as well because of all the stoppages and slow subbing and injuries and TV timeouts, and it was a highly irregular game, I felt like.
By the way, that Cheez-It mascot seemed to be pretty obnoxious the entire game, just from what I was able to see on TV. You probably had a same perspective there in the
there was a wedding as well.
There was a wedding before the game as well. There
was a wedding during
the game as well.
During a real life, which added. I don't know how I forgot that part. I think I was trying to block that out. It was kind of hopefully, I don't think they were Gamecock fans, but there was like kind of secondhand, just like little cringe about. I don't think a Gamecock fan would get married in that orange suit anyway.
No, probably
I'm
not.
gonna lock in that was not a South Carolina fan. And I hope this was staged and that Cheez-It paid for their real wedding or something, because otherwise it just added to. It was just a. I don't know. It was a weird day.
It felt like a game kind of existing in the twilight zone. You mentioned the stoppages play. We'll get into the officiating coming up in a little bit more specifically, but that first quarter felt like it lasted 2 hours. It was very stop and start, and even when the game did kind of get some kind of flow to it, when Carolina was on offense, it felt very clunky as well, and that is a credit to what Illinois was doing on defense, playing zone and all that kind of stuff, limiting what Sellers can do. But you had overthrows, you had underthrows. The running game wasn't cooking the way you thought it was going to be. You had missed tackles on defense. It just felt, like you said, very disjointed across the board throughout the entire 4 quarters.
Well, I think a lot of it came down to red zone too, and if you looked coming into that game, one thing that caught my eye statistically, and Chris and I talked about this on our last podcast before the game, statistically, Illinois, a very balanced team. And you go through all their stats compared to other Big Ten teams, there's no one area, and I'm talking, go through like all of them, rush offense, rush defense, pass defense, total offense, total defense, scoring. there's not a single statistical category that you go, oh, they're amazing in this area. Then there's not a single one where you go, oh, that's a glaring weakness. Very balanced football team.
An average good football team.
A good solid football team. There are then a couple areas. You look at their ability to create turnovers, and then you look at red zone. And this is a team that forces a lot of field goals, and this is a team that actually themselves kicks a lot of field goals if you look at throughout the year in terms of what they did in the red zone. And it's a team that converts a lot of third downs and gives up a lot of third down conversions. And then so I think you add that with the fact they're playing the most ultimate bend but don't break defense you've ever seen. And Carolina converted a ton of third downs. Illinois converted a ton of third downs. So what did those games come down to? Come down to who has turnovers and who executes in the red zone. So, one of the questions I got on our forum this morning was, well, hey, what could Carolina have done differently on offense versus that scheme? Execute better in the red zone. If you scored touchdowns during those red zone opportunities, then we're having a very different conversation. We're sitting here talking about South Carolina having 10 wins because you moved the ball.
Sure.
It was not a dominant 500 yards of offense performance, but for as weird as the game felt, Carolina ended up just shy of 400 yards of offense. So this was
they outgained them.
Yeah, this was not they just got shut down on offense type game. You look at the point total and you're like, they didn't do much on offense. The opportunities were there, but when you have early field goal, missed field goal, fake field goal that doesn't hit, and you have a fumble that wasn't quite red zone, but you're getting on the fringe of red zone, and then the turnover on downs at the end of the game.
Yep.
It's a red zone opportunity as well. So when you look at what you did, you moved the ball, and they especially moved the ball in the second half, I thought. Like, they answered, as we've seen this offense do, especially the second half of the year, when they're put up against the wall a little bit, they answer. They answered Illinois' score to take the lead. Then Illinois answered. Then South Carolina answered with a drive of their own. And, of course, got stopped on the fourth down there at the end. But I thought I feel like Sellers has gotten a little unnecessary heat in terms of this game when you look at the fact that he threw for 260 yards, threw a touchdown, no interceptions, fairly high completion percentage for a game where it felt like he had some misses. I felt like early on there was just no rhythm at all from anyone. And, credit Illinois for I think what they were doing on defense, both schematically and the slow sub stuff, kind of kept Carolina from finding a rhythm early on. So
yeah,
it's a little bit disjointed was the word that kept coming to mind for me. And I do think Illinois was dropping so many guys back into this zone coverage. They're just rushing three. I think they did more of that as the game progressed once they saw it was working. But when you're a quarterback and you're in that situation, you're making these split-second decisions. Do I try to layer the football into this zone deeper down the field, which comes with – it's a risk-reward thing, right? You can create bigger plays, but you also could get picked off. Or do I just drop the ball off underneath, get my easy 4, 5, 6 yards, let my running back or underneath receiver do the rest of the work, and now we're in 2nd and 4. And so Carolina, I feel like, was in a lot of just, all right, take what's there, take what's there, take what's there. So you're kind of dinking and dunking down the field, which is fine. But then you have to pay it off when you get down there if that is going to work for you.
And I think, and look, we've seen Sellers mature over the course of this entire season. If he has that kind of game in week 2 or week number 3, I think we're talking about it being a fantastic performance for the most part by Sellers. But what we saw in the last 6 games of the year didn't really match what we saw on Tuesday. And again, that is a lot of credit to what Illinois is doing on defense by not allowing him those huge lanes and stuff to be able to run through and force him missed tackles and all that kind of stuff. It just kind of wasn't quite in line with what we thought we were going to get out of him, given how he did against Clemson, how he did against Missouri, A&M, and all those kind of teams. And maybe the layoff had something to do with that as well. I don't really know, because you're off for essentially a month. But it wasn't the way that people thought Sellers was going to end the year based on what we'd seen down the stretch.
Well, they took away the run game. It is really, to me, that was the difference. I mean, 24 of 34 for 260 yards and a touchdown. Were there some misses here and there? Yes. Well, there are a couple balls, too, where I think his receivers got to help him out a little bit. There are a couple balls, a seam ball to the tight end, a throw to the back of the end zone to a tight end, where you're going, it's going to take a pretty good catch, but you hope your guy can maybe bail you out on a couple of those. One of those throws down the seam that got dropped was a great throw. I think the difference was just down the stretch of the season, Sellers' legs were the thing that made it dynamic, basically. And in this game, you have 11 carries for 19 yards, a long of 8. And so Illinois committed all of their resources to saying, we're going to keep him from taking over this game with his legs, and credit them for doing so. I've been asked a couple times, like, hey, were there running lanes that Sellers turned down? Because, there was some talk from Shula in his press conference about Sellers kind of continue to hone in on when do you take off running, when do you just take what's there in terms of the passing game. Was he working on some things in terms of trying to become a more complete quarterback? I think that's fair. There were a couple of times at the game that it appeared there was a window to take. There was green grass to take off and create something with his legs. To be clear, was that something that you just saw over and over and over and over again? It was just like he was just refusing to run. I would say no. A lot of times, if you go back and look, and I actually rewatched the game on the iPad on the way home while my wife was driving. So you look at it, a lot of times Illinois had a spy or even 2 spies on the field. So the second he takes off, there's a couple plays where he just made a guy miss anyway. So there's maybe an argument to be made. This is Lenore Sellers. Even if you spy him, even if you devote all your resources to slowing him down, maybe you just get a little hard-headed with allowing him to go run the football. So I do see that argument. There are a couple times where maybe he could have taken off running, but it wasn't like that was happening 10 times in the game either.
Yeah, well, we'll continue to dive into this, talk a little bit more about the running game from Sisvas Gradaway, as well as Jordan Howe coming up next. We continue to break down everything that happened in the Cheese and Citrus Bowl. Let us know your thoughts. Love Chevrolet phone lines, 803-404-6100, as well as Firehouse Subs text line, 803-404-6100 as well. It is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating on your Thursday on the game.
All right, guys, let me tell you about our friends over at Krantz Cooling and Heating. Family owned, family operated since 1983. Go check out KrantzCooling.com. That's Krantz with a K, cooling with a K.com. If you're having issues with your HVAC, hopefully you are not, but let them take care of you. 803-672-3224. Also, as the temperatures drop, I want to talk to you about preventative maintenance. Go ahead, let them come out. Inspect your system now. Get a look at it to make sure you're not going to have issues later on, so then you'll be left in the cold if that happens. Go ahead, call them. Let's take care of any issues right off the bat. But, of course, if you do have issues, call them today, 803-672-3224. They can do AC repair and installation, heating repair and installation, preventative maintenance, ductless AC, indoor air quality, or if you own or run a business, commercial HVAC as well. That's our friends at Krantz Cooling. That's Krantz with a K, cooling with a K.com.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler and Wes Mitchell here on your Thursday, reacting to everything that happened in the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl on Tuesday afternoon. Carolina, of course, falls 21-17 to the Illinois Fighting Illini, missing out on the opportunity to get that coveted 10th win on the season, which for Illinois, obviously huge for them, as they got the 10th win for only the 5th time in program history, first time since 2001. You know, going into this game, we obviously knew we were going to be without Kyle Kennard, knew we were going to be without Rocket Sanders, and we kind of wondered how that next level of player on the depth chart was going to step up those respective spots. And we'll kind of start off with the run game here, because we knew it was going to be Oscar Attaway and Jawarn Howell getting a bulk of the carries. And Attaway showed some flashes, had the long touchdown that he scored on, late in the game. Jawarn Howell got a couple carries, had the one fumble. You see promise, you see potential, and maybe if Sellers was able to run the ball a little bit better, that would have opened up the run game even more. Where are you kind of out with what we saw to the two running backs on Tuesday?
Yeah, I think here's, for me, part of the reason this game is almost hard to break down in some ways. I thought the running game was, like, good. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't great. It wasn't dominant. It wasn't bad. It was just, and I felt like the run defense, like, I'm watching the game and I felt, man, I feel like Illinois is kind of controlling the ball on the ground. Then you go back and you look at the stats, and like a third of their rushing total was on the long run at the very end of the game.
Yep.
You know, I think I think Illinois had, there was a point when I was rewatching the game, I didn't realize this watching it live. There's a point Illinois had like 45 yards on the ground, I think, in total in the game late in the third quarter, I think. So it was kind of, I felt like both sides were sort of just chipping away with the running game. Like, it wasn't like they were getting just stone cold stopped, but it wasn't like they were dominating on the ground either. Right. So you just sort of had these, all right, another third and short, let's go convert it. Both sides were staying on the field. Statistically, you look at that, there should have been more flow to this game than there was in reality. But there wasn't any flow because of turnovers, the slow subs. Felt like, I don't know if there were more stoppages because it was a bowl game or not, but it sure felt like it from a TV production standpoint. And it was just very disjointed. I do think, I think Attaway is a good player. I think Jawarn is a promising player. Clearly, Rocket was Rocket for a reason. So there was a little bit of a drop-off there. Attaway, leaning on Mike Uva's reporting here, was also dealing with a foot that had been bothering him in practice. So he was kind of gutting it out. But I thought the running game was solid, if not spectacular. And to your point, into a two-score game at that point, and Illinois starts to have to throw the ball a little bit more, you pin your ears back a little bit more on defense, you probably, I don't want to say you take over the game, but you your chances of winning skyrocket at that point. And it just felt like it shifted all the momentum right back to them. But if we're talking about Jordan Howell, big picture as a talent, I think there's a lot to work with there.
I personally would have liked to have seen him get more touches. Only had 5 on the game, 31 yards, busted off that long run for a first down at one point, and seemed to, when he did get his touches before that fumble, had a little bit of a flow to it. And then after he fumbled
Did he
the
get
ball,
any more touches after the fumble?
I feel like
think
he
did.
didn't. That may have kind of been the end for him. And again, the bowl games, obviously this game was important, trying to get the 10th win, but it's a lot of figuring out what you have for next season. And I would have liked to have seen him get more than 5 carries. Again, Adwee did a fine job with 14 carries that he got, but there's a lot of upside, like you said, to Jordan Howell, given the fact that he's only, a sophomore technically, going into next year, that would have liked to see a little bit more from him, but, hopefully that's something that can develop over the offseason, and we'll see what they do in the portal as well when it comes to running back too.
I would have liked to have seen Fuller as well get in there and get a carry or two. And so what do they do in the portal? I think there are 2 directions you could go with the transfer portal, but you have to hit the portal to an extent regardless, because you've got 3 scholarship backs coming back, and that's just not enough. Really, technically, you need 5. You need 5 scholarship running backs on your roster, and so there's different ways you could go. If you feel like Adwee, Howell, and Fuller are your guys for next year, then you're backloading it from the portal. It's more like just add some depth.
Yeah.
If you're, and I wonder if the bowl game was an evaluation of that to an extent. If you're saying, hey, love these guys, but you're secretly going, can we upgrade a little bit? That's when you're going, all right, let's go spend some more money, get more of a starter type in the portal. But then I haven't heard as much talk about this. I honestly think you've got to look at, do you maybe add 2 guys at that position out of the portal so that you can get to 5, and then it becomes, all right, can you add a starter? But then can you find that guy who's either younger or is just older and from the state and just like kind of a Davis Bevel at quarterback.
Right.
But for the running back room, it would be a dream to play for South Carolina, even if I'm not going to play a lot type guy.
We'll see what happens, and again, we'll follow that as the offseason certainly goes along. We'll dive into the defensive side of the story for South Carolina on Tuesday as well from the Citrus Bowl, as again they fell to Illinois 21-17. It's coming up next, Gamecock Club Hour, presented by Grant Schooling and Heating on your Thursday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler Head and Wes Mitchell along with you here, reacting to everything that happened in the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl. Carolina falling to the Fighting Illini of Illinois 21-17. And you brought up the point a moment ago that when you look at the numbers at the end of the day, Illinois didn't exactly dominate South Carolina on the ground, but when it came to needing plays being made on the ground, they're able to do that time and time again, especially at the end of the game. Let's go with cut number 16 here, Dave. This is Coach Beamer after the game talking about the issues with his run defense.
Yeah, they did a good job. I mean, I went for that fourth down right there. There's thoughts of kicking at the end of the game. I mean, there's thoughts of kicking the field goal, and thought we had a good play call, and we weren't able to convert on it, but went for it because I said, you know what, if we don't get it, they're going to be on the, whatever it was, I think the 7-yard line or something. And we felt good about our defense being able to go out there and get a stop, and they did a nice job. They popped that run in there, and they were mixing up personnel groupings on us, and I'll have to look at the tape just to see. We didn't, I think then we weren't great probably tackling today, but just got to, the whole key, everyone just doing their jobs, and players, coaches, we just weren't quite good enough today.
And now Pro Football Focus only credited South Carolina with 4 missed tackles on the game. That felt like way too low of a number because I felt like there was 4 missed tackles on that long run by McCray alone. But what Illinois did, especially in the second half of that game, fell in line with what I kind of expected out of a Bielema coach team. I don't know how much they've done this throughout the entire year. Again, we don't watch a lot of Illinois football, throughout the season because they're playing up there in the Big Ten. But the 9 O-lineman package where you have extra tight ends and then you hand it off right up the middle to McCray or whoever it is, and they just push you off the line. That's where they were really having a lot of their success. And they ran it time and time again. That ended up being what helped them seal the game at the end.
Yeah, if you watch Illinois just game to game, I put on 2 games before the game with Carolina just to get a feel for them, and I was thinking, man, Bielema has come into the modern era. He's actually running a spread offense. He's got an offense coordinator that runs your typical 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 running back, spread it out type offense, and he did. I mean, they went back to their roots. This is the equivalent of if you're playing college football 25 or you're playing NCAA back in the day and you have that one guy who just goes to the goal line package just for their entire offense. And that's essentially what they did. They went to a goal line type personnel, but just in the middle of the field. And they said, stop it. And I think it felt to me like another one of these kind of just bowl game wrinkles where you're going, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we just put all our linemen out there on the field and ran goal line and just said, hey, everyone run the football. Can you stop it? And I think they had success with it. They also had success. The thing about that is, and the Lafferty kid, he's
slippery.
He's very good about bouncing that thing to the outside. And, McCray got MVP and had the long run. I thought the other dude was maybe better. But you create such a large surface because that formation gets so wide and it creates extra from a defensive standpoint. You're creating extra run gaps every single time you add another guy to that line, and so create all these run gaps. And I think it makes it hard to set the edge against that. And so they're handing the ball off, but then he was very good at bouncing it to the outside if Carolina did not set the edge. And so Illinois had some success doing that. Again, it felt watching the game like, oh, they're running the ball pretty well. Statistically, they really didn't take over the game on the ground for most of the game, but it did certainly feel like in the fourth quarter that they had more success. They ran the ball well on their final touchdown drive. And then even when you're in a run the clock out situation, if you get 6 yards on first down, you really put the defense in a bad spot because you almost don't, because I was kind of, my angle, I was like, did he get the first down or not? and then you realize, well, he didn't get the first down, but he got a chunk gain.
Yeah.
That's worse than him even just going ahead and resetting the downs.
Sure, because that gives you an extra play.
Yeah, you really you need that first play defensively when the other team's trying to run out the clock. You need a tackle for loss or just a stop for no gain on that first play to keep them from being on schedule. Well, they got ahead of schedule on that, so then they get a 2-yard run. Now they're in 3rd and 2. You have to put all your defenders up near the line of scrimmage, and so if you don't make the play on that initial wave, there's nobody left. That's why you had the long run on that, is because you have everybody up near the line of scrimmage. Normally in a short yardage, you're saying, hey, we're gonna devote resources to stopping this, but we're still gonna have a safety back.
Yeah.
In that case, the game is on the line.
Sure.
You're saying, hey, you got to sell out to stop this. If you don't stop it, then you're gonna have that long run. So I say that to say, I don't know, the stats are a little bit skewed in this game because of that run, and that run took place because you're selling out to try and stop them within that 2-yard period, and then if they break through that initial wave, you're going to have a long run. But regardless, I felt like both the offense and the defense played like well enough to win, but then not well enough to where they did not take advantage of their opportunities to put the game away. Like the offense and the defense had opportunities to go win the game and were unable to do so. On that last touchdown drive by Illinois, to me, the forgotten play that you circle, 3rd and long at the early part of that drive. Carolina has all the momentum. They pin their ears back. You're like, okay, this is when they can finally get some pressure on this dude again.
Yeah.
Illinois protects it pretty well, but Altmaier kind of just lobs a pass up into traffic, and Beatty just goes up and snatches it out of the air. If that ball hits the turf, Illinois is punting the ball back to South Carolina. South Carolina has the lead. They have momentum. They probably go win the game.
Right.
Instead, Illinois goes on to have a long touchdown drive on that possession.
And you talk about the pressure. That's something we obviously had a concern about coming in with Kennard obviously opting out of the game. I thought for the most part they did a pretty good job of keeping Luke Altmaier under pressure. Got a couple sacks during that game. It felt relatively routine from what we saw all season. Credit to him because he made some very good plays, made some very good throws. And his receivers who, with Pat Bryant opting out of the game on their side of things, we thought were going to take a step back, especially for somebody like Zachary Franklin who was consistently dropping balls the entire season. Didn't happen. Beatty had that long catch. They got them down to the 1-yard line. We got the inside track on Jalen Kilgore, made that huge catch, or basically snatched it out of the hands of Kilgore on what would have been potentially an interception. And those guys stepped up and made plays. And again, for as much as we talk about what South Carolina didn't do, you have to give credit to Illinois for what they did do on offense as well that kept the chains moving and ultimately helped them win the game.
Yeah, I thought they made some great adjustments to passes while they were in the air. And, they did a good job of staying out of 3rd and long for the most part, which sort of allows you, like, even if you're winning battles up front with your defensive line, if they're in 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, then they can just go quick game, quick slant, stuff like that, and get the ball out in a hurry to kind of neutralize your rush that way. I think to actually make your rush matter, you have to be able to get in those 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10 situations, and that's when, because you have to let the routes develop down the field, that your defensive line or blitzing linebackers can actually get there. So some of the lack of pass rush overall was just down distance game situation. But I thought Brian Thomas Jr., who got the start in place of Kennard, I thought he played well. Like he is sort of a forgotten man, I think, to an extent within this defense. And I am curious to see, can he continue to take steps forward? He's never going to be 6'5" and prototypical SEC or NFL defensive end sized, right? But can he continue to grow as a player and be one of these guys that has a great senior year at South Carolina next year and helps to minimize some of those losses in the sort of front six? I thought filling in for Kennard, he looked to me like, I don't want to read his body language, but he looked to me like he kind of had something to prove as a former starter who lost his starting spot to new guys, but then was able to start in the bowl game.
Get some of your thoughts on the Firehouse Subs text line coming up next. Again, 803-404-6100. Same number for the Gamecock Larry Love Chevrolet phone lines as well if you want to react to what happened on Tuesday with the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl. It is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler and Wes on your Thursday on the game. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. It's Red and Wes Mitchell along with you on this Thursday reacting to Cheez-It Citrus Bowl. Happened on Tuesday. South Carolina falling short to Illinois 21-17. By the way, appreciate you as always. Those checking us out on the Game TV, sponsored by our friends at Shepherd's Glass and powered by Integrated Media. You can also listen to us on the 107.5 The Game app. Get it at the App Store, the Google Play Store. Take us with you wherever you go. It is a reaction Thursday, so I want to get some of your thoughts in as well. Nameless Texture weighs in and says they paid Sellers millions and then did not utilize his legs. The offense looked completely generic, and this is an example. And if this is an example of what the new offensive coordinator brings to the table, get ready for a long season in 2025. I've seen a lot of people point fingers at Shula. This obviously being his first time calling plays at Carolina. I'm not ready to jump the gun on any of that. It was his first game. Yes, he had a month to prepare, but again, he was not the normal play caller this year. Could there be wrinkles he could add in the offseason? Sure. I'm not ready to jump on Mike Shula by saying, oh, called a poor game or anything along those lines.
Yeah, and I think whenever you're the OC at a major SEC school or maybe even below that, certainly in the NFL, the offense doesn't put up points. That's where the fingers are going to be pointed. And so, I think you get that. I think you understand that. At the end of the first half, I was like, oh, Shula's going to be hearing it. And you were already seeing that. I think if you checked in on social media at halftime, hey, what's going on with this offense? And, again, I think if Carolina executes in the red zone, and if you want to say, well, hey, it's the OC's job to make them execute in the red zone, so be it. But if they execute in the red zone, then they score in the high 20s, low 30s in a perfect world, and then nobody's even having this conversation. So I think for me, when people talk play calling, that is more of a surface level, well, hey, call better plays. My question then becomes, well, what plays were they calling?
Right.
Like, Tell me what they were calling. Tell me what the defense was doing. Why was it a bad call? Was there really nobody open? And so a lot of times that's a thankless job, I think, being the OC.
Of course.
If the team executes and puts up a ton of points, you get all the credit, even though it's a lot of times more of the players. If you don't put up points, you get all the blame. And so, yeah, I'm sure there's calls he wants back. It was a little bit disjointed. I would have liked to have seen them maybe once they realized, and they did this to an extent, but once they realized, okay, the referees are not going to adjust to the way Illinois is subbing.
Yep.
Because I've seen this take, and I halfway agree. One take was, well, hey, don't sub. If you don't sub, though, and your game plan has been to sub for certain situations, you're letting them win. Like, you are letting them dictate.
Sure.
The whole point of them doing that is they're trying to dictate, A, your rhythm and your pace, but B, how you call the game. And so if you just say, well, we can't sub with them, so we're just not going to sub. Well, then they win.
Yeah.
They're getting their way if they do that. However, I think we all saw this year, Sellers operates at a pretty high level when South Carolina has gone no huddle, fast pace, and just said, hey, man, go make plays. Let's simplify a little bit. And so there were some times when I thought maybe you lean a little bit more towards, all right, they don't want us to sub. Let's give them what they want, and let's just stay on the field and give them some pace to deal with, a faster tempo. So I kind of get both those things, but you can't allow them to dictate you just never subbing.
Right.
Because it takes out Lord knows how much of your game plan.
And going back to the specific play calls, and a lot of people were bringing up, hey, didn't allow Sellers to use his feet. There were plenty of design quarterback runs in the game plan, but I also think it's important to remember for some of these magical plays that Sellers made down the stretch in those final 6 games, a lot of those were
off-script
design pass plays where the protection broke down, and he just went out there and made plays with his feet. So it wasn't necessarily that Dow Loggins was scheming up to run the ball more. He just made more of those special plays when he had the opportunity to do so, and that just didn't materialize on Tuesday. For the most part, protection was actually pretty decent. Like, that's something that's kind of getting overlooked in this game. They actually did a pretty good job protecting him on Tuesday.
Well, and they were actually, not to be completely devil's advocate or be contrarian, there were several times when Illinois rushed 3 and Sellers, I think he was so used to having to leave the pocket this year, he left the pocket, and that allowed the defenders to come up and either tackle him or force him to throw the football. When they were rushing 3, I mean, there were times when I think he could have just stood there.
Sure.
And he could have just, it's going to take longer for guys to get open because there's so many guys drop back into coverage. But eventually, somebody's going to find a window in that zone and get open. And then in the second half, they tried to stretch the zone vertically a little bit more in the second half. You saw the deep ball that got open to Delvon Campbell with the little bobble there.
Yeah. Which was also another underthrow. If he hits him in stride, it's a touchdown. They did go on to score, but that could have been a score right there.
Or if he catches it plainly.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, yeah, so I don't know what my point was, but yes, the protection was outstanding for most of the day. Now, some of that was they're just rushing 3, and then your inclination as a quarterback is because that timer's going off in your head. You're going, I got to get out of here. Especially, I mean, we've seen the passing game this year. Like, there's been times you absolutely had to get out of there. In this game, well, hey, let me just, if they don't want to rush anybody, let's just wait till somebody gets open. And I think he's settled in as the game progressed. But early on, I think there was an adjustment period as he was getting used to what they were trying to do to South Carolina schematically.
We'll dive into the controversy, and multiple ones that occurred on Tuesday between what happened with Beamer and Bielema, the Emmanwory situation, as well as the substitution stuff going on with Illinois as well, coming up in the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Reminder tonight, Carolina calls with Coach Pierce and Derek Scott at 6 o'clock right here on the game as Coach Pierce previews the start of conference play as the men will take on Mississippi State coming up on Saturday. And then on our sister station, keep in mind, 98.5 WOMG, the women's team starts their conference play as they take on Missouri tonight at 7 o'clock. Pregame coverage starting at 6:30. Again, on our sister station, 98.5 WOMG. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs up next on your Thursday on the game. 11 o'clock. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West along with you on your Thursday, reacting to the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl. South Carolina falling 21-17 to the Illinois Fighting Illini, just missing out on winning that 10th game of the season for what would have only been the 5th time in program history. Coincidentally enough, that's exactly what Illinois was able to accomplish by winning their 10th game on Tuesday against South Carolina. What's going to be remembered about this game, though, is not really what happened between the hash marks necessarily, but a lot of the antics off the field or during timeouts, for this matter. And a lot of that surrounded, and a lot of attention got paid to this game because of the beef between Coach Beamer and Coach Bielema. And we'll hear from them a little bit in a second, giving both of their sides of the story. From your perspective in person, how did you see this going down?
Well, so it is funny to me when you're at a game in person versus on TV. You pick up on a lot of stuff in person that you don't see on TV, but then also you completely lose context sometimes. Of like, you would think, oh, I'm seeing this in person, I'm going to see everything. That's not always the case. So for us in our section, you hear somebody, hey, Beamer's going off. What is happening? So then you see Beamer, everybody starts looking at Beamer, and he's just going nuts, and, they're holding him back, and he's yelling, and then the crowd, of course, it turned into like, what's happening? To then the crowd starts getting loud because they're fired up too, and Luke Day's doing like throwing his hands up to the crowd, like pumping everybody up. So in the stadium, it actually just kind of added some energy, and Carolina was down at that point at the goal line, so it was like all right, they're about to punch this ball in type situation. You really had no context for why it happened, because during a timeout, your eyes are not fixated on the sideline to that extent, especially, you're looking at your phone, you're looking around, you've got the Cheez-It thing bouncing all over the place. So then, of course, everybody in our section, we're like, hey, what happened? So, somebody sees it on Twitter. Oh, wow, Bielema taunted Beamer. And so then you're learning after the fact why it happened. And, our expectation, our thought was the same thing that Beamer said after, was that, oh, he was taunting him about the fact that they were doing the slow subs, like basically like, I'm getting the better of you with this. Bielema then, after the game, says he had a problem with the trick play on the kickoff return, which, so in the stadium, no one around us, I certainly had no feel at all that could be what it was about.
Right.
Are we playing Bielema?
Yeah, we're gonna play both here.
'Cause I've got questions.
So first, let's hear Coach Beamer's perspective on this. Cut number 14, Dave, on what happened with Coach Bielema in the third quarter.
It's heated and competitive out there, David, but in all my years of being around football, I've never seen an opposing head coach come over to the opposing team's sideline and basically make a gesture towards the opposing head coach. And I think he was upset about something that we did on the kickoff return in regards to Juju on the throwback to Nick Harbor. But I would say he needs to check the rule book, because that's something that we cleared with the officials before the game. So disappointing. He got a lot of respect for him. He's obviously done this for a long time, but in all my years of coaching, I've never seen that happen, David. An opposed coach come over while his player's hurt and basically have something to say to the opposing head coach. But I got my own team to worry about. We weren't good enough today.
So that's Beamer's side of things. Here is Coach Bielema's, cut number 27, Dave.
The only thing that I did was there's a unwritten philosophy in coaching that when you do this as a college kickoff return guy, what you're doing is you're telling everybody else that it's going to be a fair catch and it's going to be dead in the end zone when the ball lands. The reason we do that, and I first got aware of it, was in the NFL, was kickoff and kickoff return is the highest percentage of injury in the sport. So one of the things that coaches began to do was everybody out of respect started T-barring. I think these guys would tell you, Everybody does that. I've never seen it any other way. It's not an official. There's nothing illegal. They didn't do anything illegal. But it put us, I think, in a position that we now, the ethic of what that is, got evaporated there, because our kids stop. So when you're a kickoff return unit, right, if I'm running at you and the kickoff return is back there, the guy blocking me, he doesn't know what's going on, so he's going to begin to engage you. And when you see somebody do that before the whistles are blown, you can stop, decelerate, and you don't have these massive collisions. Listen, I love Shane. He's a good person. I know somebody said that he thought I did it at him. I did it their whole damn sideline. I wasn't going personally at him. I did it their whole sideline. I just wanted them to understand that I know what just happened. There's nothing illegal. There's nothing wrong. I just have never seen it done in any level of football, college, or pro. That's it.
Well, there's your two sides of the story. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I see what both sides are saying. So here's the thing about the T-bar to me, and the one part about the entire thing that does not hold up for me about what Bielema said is he's saying the T-bar, which I don't know if we've ever talked about the T-bar.
First time I've ever heard it referred to that way. It makes sense.
But I've seen countless kickoff returners do the T-bar, right? Okay. He's saying the T-bar is an indication that you are going to fair catch the football.
Or that it's going to sail over your head and be a touchback, usually.
If I've never seen a kickoff returner, and maybe I'm getting too far into the semantics, but I've never seen a kickoff returner do the T-bar and then do a fair catch signal. That's
right.
Not a thing.
Right.
You either fair catch it or you return it or you T-bar. The T-bar is an indicator to your team that it's either over your head or you're not bringing it out.
Yeah.
It's to your team. It's not to everyone. It's not I've never heard it called a safe, maybe I'm wrong. I've never heard it called a safety thing. If you're fair, you can fair catch kickoffs. It's not a, because if you do the T-bar and the kick is in play, let's say you catch it at the 5, everybody's going to keep running.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That
does not negate the play.
Yes, there's a fair catch signal for a reason.
Yes.
If you wanted to fair catch it, you would fair catch it. The T-bar is, I'm not returning this out of the end zone. It's either over my head or it's deep enough that we've already decided on the side. You're telling your protection, you're telling your blockers, we're not bringing this one out. It's not an indicator to the other team. If they want to use it as an indicator, then fine. But this play was designed to take advantage. Yes, it's a trick play. It is a trick play.
Yeah.
But it's designed to take advantage of teams that are not hustling out the kickoff coverage.
And I understood it the same way as well, that, when you're doing that, you're indicating to your return squad
team, not
that,
to their
hey,
team.
I'm not taking this out for whatever that's worth to your team. That's not your job of letting the other team know that necessarily. And that's where I have a problem with unwritten rules in sports in general, because they're unwritten. There is no penalty against them. And Beamer said, I cleared it with the officials before the game. We're going to try this. I went back and watched the game last night to see if there was any interaction between Bielema and the officials after that kickoff. Maybe you saw it in the stadium because they didn't show it on TV. But to my knowledge, I didn't see him say anything to them. Maybe he did. But again, there's nothing against it. There's no rule against it. Maybe there will be a rule after the season against it. Who knows? But as a coach, Coach Beamer said, I am trying to maximize my efficiency for trying to win this game. And if I can exploit a gray area in the rule book, I'm going to do it. And that's exactly what they did. Nobody got hurt. And, Nick Harbor squared up the sidelines to the 25 or 30-yard line or however far he got. But I agree with you. You are not inclined for the safety of the other team with the T-bar, which is the way that Bielema was kind of angling this, as well as, okay, if you have a problem with it, if you're Coach Bielema, you have a handshake after the game where you're going to be face-to-face with Coach Beamer. You can talk about whatever the issue is. To do it during and there were some fake injuries in this game, a legitimate injury where your DB got hit in the head by Sellers' knee and looked like he was in outer space getting up from the field. So a legitimate injury, that to me is what rubs me the wrong way, because why are you taking this opportunity when your player's legitimately hurt to try and needle the other sideline?
Yeah, and we actually, that was another thing in the stadium. Everybody I was around thought that was a fake injury, like, because we didn't see his head got hit. Everyone's so conditioned to seeing all the fake injuries now. everyone assumed this was a fake injury as well. I guess it probably wasn't, but yeah, I'm with you. And Beamer even went over and tapped the kid and checked on him. It looked like
Sure.
And then that happened. To answer your question from earlier, I don't know if there was a reaction from. I wasn't watching Bielema after. To be honest, I looked down on the kickoff return because I thought I saw the T-bar and thought the play was over too.
He fooled you too.
I got tricked on the trick play, but I mean, I'm trying to think way back. If you're on kickoff coverage, and you're running down there at 100 miles an hour, I don't even think you're seeing. Like maybe you're seeing the kickoff guy at this point. You're supposed to have your head on a swivel. You're watching the guys that are trying to block you. So I don't know. I've never. There's no way that's a coaching point.
No.
To tell if I'm a special teams coordinator, there's no way it's a coaching point. Hey guys, if you see the T-bar, let up. No. Have you ever been to a practice? Special teams is your special teams guys are your guys that are running down there at 100 miles an hour to hit the kickoff returner at all costs.
And maybe, because again, this is the first time we've seen them do this year, maybe in studying the film for Illinois, DK Millis and Beamer saw when other teams were doing this, they saw them pull up. So they said, okay, we're going to take advantage of that. Again, nothing in the rule book against it. Maybe they change the rule in the offseason, then we can have a different conversation. But for right now, there is no rule that says you cannot do what Beamer and what his team did on Tuesday and it be a penalty, because it wasn't. So again, I feel like Bielema's kind of, again, you're going to try and defend your actions no matter what, but it doesn't have a solid foundation, in my opinion.
T-bar, T-bar, T-bar. Now we've used the word T-bar.
We have
50 more times than we ever have in the past. Also, it is kind of rich that Bielema would pretend or be offended over a gray area, which I don't even see it as a gray area because there's no indicator whatsoever about the T-bar in their rule book as far as I'm aware. But it's kind of rich coming from someone who clearly was using the gray area on substitutions for the entire game.
We'll get to that, as well as Coach Bielema exploiting a kickoff rule himself back in the day. That's coming up next. It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, reacting to the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl on your Thursday here on the game.
Like Tyler said, presented by our friends over at Firehouse Subs. Want to try something new? Try the new French dip with premium cut roast beef and, of course, the au jus on the side. That's what makes the French dip great. If you want to try something new, check that out. Or try in the new year any of your awesome favorites from our friends over at Firehouse Subs. The best way to do that, it's almost lunchtime, firehousesubs.com or the Firehouse Subs app. Also, as we've been telling you, Hot Sauce Bar is back. Add some flavor to any sub when you dine in or pick up. Tyler was telling us he's got a new favorite. It's the Gator sauce. That's what it's called, Tyler?
That's correct. Gator hammock.
Gator hammock added to brisket, add bacon. Try that today, or whatever your favorites are. Go ahead and get them as well for your lunch today from our friends at Firehouse Subs. Again, firehousesubs.com, 15 convenient locations, Firehouse Subs app.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell along with you on your Thursday. It is time to flip this card over and check the stats brought to you by our friends over at Palmetto Cards. And when it comes to the stats from this game in the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl, for the most part, South Carolina owned most categories, outgained Illinois in the game, only scored 17 points, obviously, converted over half of the third downs. Did get penalized more times than Illinois did, which we'll get to here in a moment. But for the most part, played a good game, just ended up coming up short for a lot of reasons, which we dove into over the course of the show so far. But what people are going to remember most from this game is the antics that happened, mainly with Coach Beamer and Coach Bielema in the third quarter. I learned a valuable lesson yesterday from Chris on Twitter, because
That's the longest tweet that Chris has ever put out.
it has, but here's the thing. I thought I was the only one that remembered that, because I knew about that well before this game. When I think of Coach Bielema, I think of the exact situation that Chris brought up yesterday, and I was saving it for today as like, aha,
he got
gotcha.
you.
He beat me to the punch, so I won't hold my tongue.
He stole your thunder.
He stole my thunder, and he's not here for me to. And then left. And he doesn't show up today, so I shouldn't have. I should have tweeted something out myself on New Year's Eve. Instead, I decided to hold on to it, and Chris beat me to the punch. But what he brought up yesterday was a very valid point. Back in 2006, for those that don't remember, in college football, there was a one-year rule that the clock started rolling when toe met leather on kickoffs, which meant the offense usually wasn't, taking their first snap till about 30 seconds into the game. Whatever reason, that was the rule, I guess, trying to cut down on game times. But it's a rule that Coach Bielema exploited when Wisconsin, who he was the head coach of at the time, played Penn State late in the season in November. Leading 10-3 right before halftime, 23 seconds to go. They intentionally went offsides on 2 straight kickoffs and forced Penn State to return 3 straight kickoffs before the half, ran the clock out. Penn State didn't get a chance to possess the ball and get a late score. After the game, he said, I didn't necessarily agree with the rule the way it's written, but I knew the rule and I wanted to maximize it. I have to put the team in a position to have success. How is that any different from what Coach Beamer did on Tuesday, where, again, they probably saw something on film where Illinois was letting up when opponents were T-barring, as we now know is the proper term for it. And they said,
T-bar.
Let's take advantage of it. Let's have Juju T-bar. They're going to let up, and then we're going to lateral it over to Nick Harbor on the other sideline and see if we can get something out of it.
Which, by the way, if that thing would have hit, would have been one of the greatest plays in South Carolina history.
Oh, man. We could have seen him get to full speed.
He was winding up. We were about to see a full 100-plus yard sprint from Harbor. That would have been special. Credit to a couple of Illinois guys, because luckily they didn't quit on the play. And
when they see the T-bar, they're supposed to. Safety.
I know. Safety. All about safety, supposedly. But they did not quit on the play and were able to get the angle on him. And it ended up being all that. It was like the same thing as just
it would have as a touchback, essentially.
Yes, but, man, that thing was close to hitting.
Which, by the way, Nick Harbor, very solid game. He is coming into his own.
Steadily improving.
Yep.
And you got to give a ton of credit to him, of course, as well. But Mike Fury, for the development we have seen from Nick, just steadily getting better. I feel like, I don't know, maybe along the Vandy game or so, you started to see his confidence go up. He's doing the first down sign when he makes first down catches. He's running with some power after he gets the football. So kudos to Nick and Coach Mike Fury for the job there. And, yeah, I mean, coaches are hypocrites, man. This is kind of like politicians, where you're gonna make the argument you need in the moment.
Sure.
If it never would have happened, but it would have been absolutely hilarious if somebody in that room had the wherewithal to have remembered that, been like, well, what about 20 years ago?
It's weird. I don't know why that's the first thing I think of when I think of Coach Bielema, but it legitimately is. Even before all this happened on Tuesday, like, that's the thing that I remember the most about him in his tenure as a head coach of over the course of 17, 18 years, whatever it's been. And Chris beat me to the punch.
Yeah, and then just left.
And then just
dropped the mic and left.
I'm gonna go hang out with the family for a week instead. I'll let him know when he comes back.
Dude, the fact that he got upset about that, though, after manipulating the substitution rule for the entire game, is still very rich to me.
And that's something else that Beamer spoke about after the game. And we have to remember, this was a Big 12 officiating crew. because when you have a bowl game between two, non-conference opponents, you get a third-party conference to officiate it, so there's no bias either way or whatever it may be. And this goes to the brokenness of college football. They don't have uniform officiating across all conferences, that they do enforce rules differently. As we've seen this year in the SEC, yes, the substitution rule needs to be fixed in general, but a lot of officiating crews only give so much leeway into how long the defense has to substitute before they'll throw a flag for saying, hey, you're taking too long because you're not making a reasonable effort to get off the field. And they let Illinois just take all the time they wanted to. Yes, Carolina did substitute a little bit later than they probably should have in some situations, but still, Illinois was dragging that thing out as long as possible. Carolina had to burn the timeout in both halves to prevent a delay of game on their own end because they were in a position where they couldn't snap the ball.
Yeah, and I would say I don't know how apparent this was on TV, but one thing you could see in the stadium, Tyler, is Illinois wasn't only substituting slowly, like one for one. All right, Carolina subs, then they sub. Oh, we're going to run our guys off slow. Something I think has to be addressed. They were double subbing.
Yeah.
So if they would run a guy 5 yards on the, oh no, wait, not you, come back. And the refs were still letting the second wave of guys come onto the field. So that if you're going to let them slow sub, okay, I guess that's how you're going to officiate it. But don't let them double sub within. So this is not Carolina has made a second sub. Carolina makes their sub. Illinois runs a wave of people. Oh, no, come back. Then they leave the field, and a different wave of defenders come onto the field. I don't know how that's the clock, whatever clock we're using, should start when you initiate the sub. And then I don't even think it should be a penalty. I think it should be you have a certain amount of time to sub, and at that point, the other team, you should release the snap. You should, as the ref, you should allow the center to snap the ball, and then if they have 12 guys on the field, then yeah, it's a penalty. If they have 9 guys on the field because they're not completely substituting or they're not in position, then the offense has the advantage of guys not being lined up. So I understand why the opponent is allowed to sub. That's a good rule.
Sure.
In a vacuum. However, now you're taking advantage of the, and was this not a huge thing in the Georgia-Tennessee game that it was officiated a certain way compared to,
because penalties are thrown because they deemed
what exactly happened in Georgia-Tennessee?
They deemed that the defense was not subbing at a reasonable pace, which again, there's no clear line on reasonable pace. That is a subject call for the official, which again goes back to why this needs to be looked at in the offseason to have a clear, okay, here's a second differential of how long you need to have to substitute before we'll throw a flag.
Yes. And this, some rules you go, that's a difficult rule to. This rule actually should be pretty easy to put in specifics. You have, which I thought, I don't even know where 3 seconds came from. I remember you have 3 seconds to respond or what. Here's the thing. You can tell if at what point in the game did the refs not go, all right, reasonable effort may be subjective, but they're clearly doing this on purpose.
Yeah.
So I think at some point, do you not have to give Illinois, and it looked like the refs were talking to Illinois about it. I think the way a ref, when it's something that's subjective, the way you should handle that, warning first, right?
Right.
Give them a warning, and hey, next time you clearly do this, it's going to get called, and then you can speed up the process a little bit.
Well, I think the officials just had a poor control over that game as a whole, and it's not the reason South Carolina lost, but it certainly didn't help. The bigger controversy coming away from the game for a lot of people is what happened with Nick Emmanwory. We'll dive into that coming up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Reaction Thursday here on the game. Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler and Wes along with you on your Thursday, reacting to Carolina falling 21-17 in the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl on Tuesday to the Illinois Fighting Illini. Quick reminder, Carolina calls tonight. Coach Paris, Derek Scott, 6 o'clock here on the game, previewing Carolina starting conference play on Saturday against Mississippi State. The women's team in action as they start conference play, taking on Missouri tonight at 7 o'clock. On our sister station, 98.5 WOMG, pregame coverage starting at 6:30 for that one. Again, 98.5 WOMG. I said earlier, I think a lot of what's going to be remembered from this game is not necessarily what happened on the field itself, but things that were happening during timeouts as well as on the sidelines. And something that a lot of people were fired up this morning about, and rightfully so, I understand, was the Nicky Emmanwory situation. After he, again, did not choose to opt out of the game like Kennard or like Rocket Sanders did. Gave the indication he was going to be playing on Tuesday, played the entire first half, and then Terry and I were watching the game at Jay's Corner for our watch party, and about late third quarter, early fourth quarter, I said, Peyton Williams has been out there a lot today. Who's not out there? And it was then we realized, well, Emmanwory hasn't played the entire second half. Obviously got sent to the locker room, left in, hooded sweatshirt and didn't really talk to anybody on the way out. Very weird situation. And after the game, Coach Beamer, cut number 15, Dave, gave his brief explanation on what happened.
Internal team matter. Not going to discuss it.
So, by all indications up to this point, and we don't have all the details as of yet, to be fair, it seems like Nicky Emmanwory made a decision at halftime or at the start of the second half that he was not going to play the rest of the game, and the coaches did not know he was going to make that decision.
Yeah. That's where all indications are right now, is that this was very surprising to the staff. And I'll just say this. I mean, if I want to know, first of all, when Nicky Emmanwory personally made the decision, not, he obviously did not tell many people or any people, it appears, prior. When did he make the decision? Because there would have been, if he was hesitant about this game, there would have been a much better way to handle this. Like, I think that part we can all agree on.
Yeah.
Because if he was hesitant about the game, if he didn't want to play, if he wanted to be limited in the game, it could have been a conversation of, look, Coach, I'm hesitant about this game, but I want to go out with my teammates. I want to play. And then it could have been, all right, so we're going to let it be known, like everybody's on the same page. We can get Peyton Williams ready to play more. And then and obviously Cam Ward is, I don't want to call this a trend yet. Does this even happen? We were talking off air. Does this happen if this idea had not even been... Who even knew this was a thing before a week ago?
Nobody really, and I do think the Cam Ward thing certainly played a role here. And look, I don't have a problem with guys opting out. What Kennard did, what Rocket Sanders did, I get it. And Rocket Sanders dealt with his injuries. Kyle Kennard is obviously going to be a relatively high pick. I can understand it. If Nicky Emmanwory decided, hey, I don't want to play in the Citrus Bowl, that's fine. I get it. You're going to be a pretty high draft pick. I understand. It's the just deciding on your own halfway through the game that bothers me, because again, everybody was caught off guard by this, and maybe that played into why Beamer was so fired up about what Bielema did, because he just dealt with that situation and sent Emmanwory back to the locker room. And what's important to remember from what we know up to this point about the Cam Ward situation, that was something agreed on before the game. By all indications, Mario Cristobal knew that Cam Ward was only going to play the first half so he could get the Division I touchdown record and then sit out the second half. So everybody was on the same page, as you mentioned, with Miami for the Pop-Tarts Bowl, coincidentally enough, in the same stadium. It seems like Emmanwory, again, made this decision on his own. Yeah, strong indications are that Shane Beamer did not know that was going to be the case. If there were... if it was a situation where there was a conversation beforehand, then everybody could have gotten on the same page with it. And then you wouldn't, in my opinion, you wouldn't have done, what is the point of playing? You could get hurt in the first half just as easily as you could get hurt in the second half. So, if you said, hey, you're gonna play about half of your usual snaps
you could have just rotated more. You could have said, look, I know you want to go out with your teammates. We're gonna rotate a little bit more liberally than we normally do. And then at the end of the game, when you need to stop, 7 is on the field, your best defender that was available, in my opinion. So you really, it just, say whatever you want, no matter what side you're on of it, it was not handled great in the way the decision was made. And I certainly understand why fans are frustrated. And, you know, if you're fans and you're at this point paying, you know, you're paying money that then goes in the players' pockets, there is a little bit more of an expectation of guys to play than, I know there's always an expectation for guys to play, right?
Sure.
But before it was, well, who are you to say that they have to play? Now, I don't know if it shifts a little bit. Even though the guys aren't employees, it does shift a little bit when you start talking about fans' hard-earned dollars going in the players' pockets.
We're open to all perspectives here. Roman actually weighed in on this with kind of an opposite view of this on the Firehouse Subs text line 803-404-6100. Said anyone complaining about Nick sitting out needs to reevaluate where they're thinking. Think about all the great things he's done since day one of the program. Didn't even have to play in the first half if he didn't want to. Played a half football and risk injury for his university. People think these players owe them something when they owe you nothing. Gains some perspective. I can understand where you're coming from, and I don't think this completely sullies Emmanwory's legacy because he's done a lot of great things here. It's a sour way to go out, no doubt. But you bring up the point that, to a degree, yes, you are, as a fan base, if you're paying into NIL, contributing to whatever Emmanwory was making, which was probably a decent amount, considering the fact he was one of the better players on the entire team, one of the better players at his spots in all of college football. So I wouldn't venture to say they don't owe you anything, because to a degree they do. And again, if he wanted to opt out before the game and just say, you know what, I don't want to risk the injury by playing in the Citrus Bowl, that's fine. I have no problem with that. But if you're committing to play, if you're going to sit out the second half, at least make sure everybody knows. Like, if you're going to do it, go the true Cam Ward route and say, Coach, I will give you 30 minutes, and then I'm done. They're not going to probably like that.
Not going to enjoy it.
But you can
and
at
they
least,
may tell you no.
You can at least make them aware of what you're doing as opposed to blindsiding them before the second half started.
What was the texter's name?
Roman.
Yeah, like Tyler said, I'm open to other opinions, but even to what you said, you got to communicate it, man. I feel like not communicating it, and NFL teams are not going to love that either. Like, I don't know if NFL teams care anymore if you opt out of a bowl game. But the middle of a game, not communicating it, not having everybody on the same page, I'd love to know who all, if anyone, actually knew. From what we understand, from what we know, Shane Beamer, your head coach, did not know. Mike Uva, with us on Gamecock Central, has reached out to Emmanwory and heard back and gave him an opportunity to clear the air. He said he does want to clear the air, but he has not taken him up on that opportunity yet. So, right. So there is an opportunity if Emmanwory wants to tell his side in order to do so. I'm with you too, Tyler. I don't think you take what appears to be bad decision and just say, I'm done with him. He's given you 3 really, really, really good years. He's played his tail off. Has played through being banged up. Has played through injuries. I don't know. I don't know where the decision came from. I'd love to know more. But just head coach not knowing, and it's at halftime of a tight football game. You could have at least, I know Peyton Williams was ready. He went in there, made some tackles.
Sure.
He did the same thing before the Vandy game.
He did fine.
Not putting him in a great spot.
And I don't know if Emmanwory being out there in the second half is the difference between Carolina winning and losing the game. But, again, when you have one of the best players at your respective position in all of college football, that certainly can help. So, again, messy situation all around. We'll see, what details come out in time from both sides on this, on what exactly went down. But we'll certainly react to that when that does indeed end up happening. Come back, wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Thursday here on the game. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler and Wes here on your Thursday, breaking down everything that happened in the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl on Tuesday. Carolina falling to Illinois 21-17. And I'm glad that we can put this game behind us very soon because I'm sick of having to say Illinois without pronouncing the S. Because everybody calls me out for it every single time I do it. I can't help it. It's a force of habit.
I did not call you out, but you mixed in a couple of Illinoises in there, Tyler. Somebody, if I'm being honest with you, man.
Some Rusty texted me the pronunciation guide on the text line. I get it. I know I make that mistake. I'm sorry. But I won't have to say that word much more in the offseason. You kind of
split the difference there. Like sometimes you did Illinois, sometimes you did Illinois.
If I'm leaning with it, I feel like I'm more consciously aware. But if I'm just
is that a Georgia thing? Is that a Tyler thing?
I don't know. I've never been in position to say the word Illinois as much as I have in this past month.
Well, I called him Missouri earlier for some reason. I don't know why.
Well, apparently, did you see what Altmaier said after the game where the Carolina players were calling him Syracuse at the team events?
I don't know what's funnier,
that's pretty funny.
If they thought they were Syracuse or if they were doing it as a deep cut, like just calling them that on purpose.
I would assume it'd probably be the latter, which, again, that's hilarious. And really, like, if you squinted watching the game and you couldn't read the writing on the helmet, you kind of would have thought it was Syracuse, to be honest with you.
That's pretty funny. Hey, this thing, for there to be not a ton of, background between the two teams, this thing was pretty chippy and like they start calling Altmaier Kyle McCord or something.
Yeah. Listen, if you could make it happen where Illinois was coming to Willie B in September, that'd be one of the most hostile environments of the entire year, I feel like.
Let's trade Virginia Tech for Illinois.
And let's make it a home game.
Yes.
I'm very much against neutral site games during the regular season.
How did the crowd sound on TV? Because it
sounded good.
It was pretty loud in there.
They sometime in the second half when they queued up Sandstorm and everybody was waving the towels, you could see at that point like, wow, that is a majority South Carolina crowd. It looked like there. And again, you're closer in Carolina to Florida than Illinois is, but it seemed like there were a few Illinois fans there. But for the most part, Carolina seemed to have taken it over.
Yeah, and Illinois, they traveled honestly better than I thought they would, to give them a little credit.
Because this game meant a lot to them too. Like again, the 10th win was very valuable to them, much like it is Carolina.
Well, and both sides had 5-7 seasons last year, and both sides were 9-3. Both sides going for 10 this year, so it clearly mattered. There was the competitive juices were flowing. Both sides wanted this one, which I think with all the talk of like off the field stuff in college athletics, when the guys are on the field, if they make it to the field, they care.
Sure.
And you know what? The thing that surprised me, not to go back to it too much, the thing that surprised me about Nick, I thought if he got to the game, which he did, I just wouldn't have seen. This is a guy that I watched against Akron get like a helmet to the leg or something and limp pre-snap, go make the tackle while hurt. Or no, it was Wofford. It was Wofford. Against Wofford, a game that you're going to win.
Late in the season.
And then Peyton Williams runs onto the field and Nick just waves him back to the sideline out of just competitive juices, competitive nature. That's why I thought once he got into the, I think I figured he would make a decision. Like it wasn't just, I'm going to play. Like when you're projected to go as high as he is, you're going to have to, all right, should I sit this thing out or not? I really thought if he played that this would not be an issue.
Yeah.
And, I don't know. I hate that. It's a local kid too.
Oh, sure. Beloved. And obviously, going back to his first year, got thrust into a starting role right out of the gate in the season opener back in 2021, 2021, I guess it was, or 2022, excuse me, and has been a mainstay on the defense since then. Has had a lot of great plays, the interceptions he's gotten this year, and helped lead what has been a very strong secondary. And again, what happened on Tuesday does not negate all those things. It just leaves a sour taste in people's mouth, as that's the last memory they're going to have of you in a Carolina uniform. And I see some people, bringing up here, if he, comes back to Willie B down the road, he's going to get booed. I think enough time will pass where people will largely not forget this, but it's not going to weigh on their mind as heavily as not right now, because we're roughly 48 hours removed from it. But it's certainly something people aren't going to forget, but I don't think it completely tarnishes his legacy necessarily.
Yeah, and you just you hate for it to end that way because of the fans. You also hate for it to end that way because now you're getting ready for the NFL draft. You're going to have your pro day at South Carolina. You're going to be working out at South Carolina. And so for there to be that tension, like I'd assume they'll sit down and talk about this and go over all sides. But I don't know, man. You absolutely hate to see his career at South Carolina end the way it did. By the way, before we close out, are those new? Is that a new
These
headset?
are, yes. Chris pointed that out the other day. I was at Walmart a couple days after Christmas getting some other stuff and saw these for like $10 in electronics. And
Those are $10.
yeah, they're $10. My other ones fell apart about a month ago, and I've been
Those look
borrowing
like
ones here.
high dollar.
Yeah, I think it's just because they're a different color. Which I bought a different color so nobody else would take them.
They're Sony, right?
They're Sony, yeah.
Yeah.
$10. Maybe they were on sale. I don't know. I saw them. I was like, well, I need a new pair. May as well get them now.
No, they look like you went all out.
I know they stand out. You can actually, they don't blend into the background of our stand and repeat when you're watching us on the game TV, so they stand out. Well, you're not up against a black background.
Yeah.
So
No, I like them.
By the way, try any of the Cheez-Its down there in Orlando? No?
I didn't have a single Cheez-It.
None. They sell them at the game?
They sell Cheez-It Cheez-It specialty items. Like they had a Cheez-It hot dog.
Okay.
They had Cheez-It nachos.
Interesting.
They had Pop-Tart desserts. I told myself I was going to try them, but I didn't.
Okay.
Missed opportunity.
By the way, I think that Cheez-It mascot got on everybody's nerves.
Yes. 100%.
That'll do it for today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. More reaction to the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl coming up next with the halftime show. Myself, Terry Ford, on your Thursday here in the game.